Okay, so a few months ago, I was driving to work at about 5 in the morning, and someone tried to cut me off at an on-ramp. This was before coffee. I just couldn't help myself. I stomped it. It torqued the engine. And basically, I created a bit of an exhaust leak on the passenger side. Here are the steps I'm going to be following. 1 is to set my safety and jack up the car. 2, remove the exhaust manifold and the exhaust pipe bolts. 3, disconnect the exhaust pipe flange. 4, remove the exhaust manifold heat riser. More about that in a little bit. Clean the heat riser, set the new gasket, reinstall the heat riser, reconnect the exhaust pipe, reattach the pipe to the manifold bolts, tighten the exhaust pipe manifold bolts, then start the engine, and check for any leaks. Hopefully there won't be any, and then be able to drive down the road without it sounding like the world is coming to an end. So here we go. Here are the different parts that I was discussing just a minute ago. This is the end of your exhaust manifold. This is your exhaust manifold heat riser, and this is the flange for your exhaust pipe. The gasket we're going to be replacing is going to be right here, and you can see the edge of it as it rolls around. Now you'll see that the edge of it disappears right here, and that's because that's where the gasket is blown out. So this is where the exhaust leak has been really, really bad. As I mentioned before, the heat riser has a little flapper valve inside similar to a stovepipe. Prior to 180 degrees, those exhaust gases are deflected back across the intake manifold, heating up the carburetor and exiting out the other side. It will allow for the carburetor to heat up more quickly. Here down by the Mason-Dixon line in Maryland, I don't really need it. For now, I'm going to go ahead and replace this gasket. Okay, so let's go ahead and get under the car and start loosening those bolts. Okay, so I've already prepped it with some WD-40. Okay, so there we have the flange disconnected. The exhaust is disconnected. Now we have to just go ahead and pull this so we can show it to you what it looks like. Okay, so here we go. This is the exhaust manifold heat riser. It sits in there like so. And when this thermostat or coil heats up to 180 degrees, this rotates and opens up your exhaust. Now this, was the gasket that was in it, and clearly that would constitute a little bit of a of an exhaust gap. So we're going to go ahead and replace this. First, what I'm going to do is kind of shoot it with some cleaner, wire brush it a little bit, and then fit a new gasket, bolt it back up. So I went ahead and sprayed some degreaser and wire wheeled this a little bit just to kind of clean off any carbon deposits, etc. There's probably still a little bit here and there that just isn't going to come off without a really hard scrub, or probably needs to be resurfaced or actually just done away with. However, I'm not in the position to go ahead and buy a new one, nor do I want a new one, and I can't afford a spacer either. So we are going to roll with this for today. I have a Fel-Pro gasket. This one is a metal ring with kind of like I assume it's some sort of asbestos or cardboard-like material. I'm going to assume it's asbestos-like, given the application. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and use this for now. And like I said, at some point I will order the spacer and replace this entirely. And at that point, I will use a more robust gasket. Also, one last thing. So, in telling the difference on how to mate things up, the flat surface is what mates the exhaust manifold. And on the flip side, you'll see there's kind of a beveled edge in here, and that's because as you mate the exhaust pipe to the heat riser, there's a bit of a rounded ball edge that fits in here that allows it to adjust as necessary as you tighten it up. So anyway, again, this is the top side, relatively flat, and that's what goes towards the exhaust manifold. So let's go ahead and get this bolted up. Okay, so one of the things I like to do before reattaching everything is I'll wire brush as much crud and crap off the bolts as possible. It'll keep the nut and bolt from binding and either breaking the bolt or just creating a delay, turning a 20-minute job into a 2-day job. Okay, so I'm gonna slide my gasket up, followed by the heat riser. position. I'm gonna get that set. Now I'm gonna position the flange and mate the exhaust pipe up to it. So even though sometimes I may use an electric socket driver to remove things just to save time, I really avoid using them to reinstall stuff. I like to be able to feel what's happening in the event that a bolt or a nut are going to bind up. I want to make sure that I feel it before the electric drill just grinds it in there. So I use just a regular socket wrench to go ahead and reattach. I want to try to get as much even pressure on the gasket as possible. Like that. And I really hope that's not stripped. Old bolts, they will strip if they're rusted out like that. And if that is stripped, then I'm screwed. So I'll be able to only tighten it so much. All right. Yep, it's stripped. So this is not feeling as tight as I'd like it to be. So that may be a project for another day, depending. Hopefully those keep it as tight as it needs to be. So let's go up top and take a look at what it looks like. Okay folks, so here's the finished and installed exhaust gasket. Again, this is the exhaust manifold heat riser, and the exhaust flange. So everything has been tightened as much as I dare to tighten it on these older bolts. But for now, the gasket is in place. Everything is bolted up. I'm now going to go ahead and lower the car, start it up, and make sure everything is functioning as it should. Okay, so there it is. Nice and quiet. So project follow-up. Once I had everything taken apart, I found that there were some discrepancies which I hadn't considered. First thing I noticed that when I separated the exhaust pipe from the exhaust manifold, the exhaust pipe donut gasket is severely worn down. And although it's not bad enough to cause a leak, it is definitely going to need to be replaced. Number two, the exhaust manifold bolts were pretty well worn down. They were bent, they're corroded, they're pretty well shot, and they're somewhat stripped. So far, they're holding the exhaust assembly together, but I clearly shouldn't plan any road trips with those exhaust bolts being the way they are. So number three, the exhaust manifold heat riser is neither required nor desired by me in my climate. And so I do want to replace that with a spacer. And so the lesson learned here is a little more consideration about what was needed for this task would have pushed me to get the replacement manifold bolts along with the donut gasket. So now I'm going to have to budget and perform this procedure again next month, which is a nice way of saying I have to do the same work twice. Perfect example, lesson learned of what not to do.